But maritime, we think, has a great potential. And there's a few reasons for that. 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, that potential was not there. But if we talk about creating a new set of port facilities, we're talking about creating a set of infrastructures that will be there for the next 50 or 100 years or more. And for that, we have the opportunity to vision how the world's changing. And right now, today, the counterpart ports, the real big ports on the seacoasts in the Pacific and the Atlantic, are very busy. Growth in international trade has gone up very quickly, about 6 or 8% per year. And the capacity of those seacoast ports has not increased like that. So there's a lot of congestion on the seacoast ports. Communities are thinking there's too much activity going on in many locations, and they have to be offloaded to railroads or in some cases truck and brought to the Midwest. This is, I think, a large part of the Midwest's economic future. If we can bring more cargo via water, first of all, it's better for the environment. It's less expensive for certain sorts of cargoes that will be benefited by coming via cargo. So we're having conversations, for example, with a Canadian port, the Port of Halifax in Nova Scotia. If this all becomes real, the Port of Nova Scotia, Halifax, would be a partner with us, where they would be the deep water port for the Midwest of the U.S., and we would love to be the major embarkation point and disembarkation point for cargo that is coming to the Midwest of the U.S. and Canada. And we think Cleveland can play that role. So when we're thinking about new port facilities, we're thinking about marketing Cleveland around the world. We brought in some leading experts to talk to us about this, and we compete very well. We compete very well for cargo that will come out of India, Singapore, and Northern Europe for a whole variety of reasons. And if those cargoes can come to Cleveland, we'll have all sorts of economic activity that we don't have today. We can serve a larger area than Cleveland. Companies throughout the Midwest might consider Cleveland, where they don't even think about Cleveland today. So that's our pitch. We think maritime has a bright future, and we think Cleveland can benefit quite a lot. So I said we are in 2 business lines. We're talking about 3 now. Maritime exists, but we'd like it to get larger. Business finance, today we call it development finance, and those are the unique projects where we would help finance a factory or a public building. Right now we're financing a project for the Cleveland Clinic, a $250 million expansion. It's going to go through the Port Authority. We are financing the new VA project, which is the new Veterans Administration. It's about a $150 million project. I've spent a lot of time on these projects in the last weeks. Major infrastructure projects for the community of various sorts. We play a very vital, we think, role in that. We'd like to do that in the future, but I'd like us to be a little bit more strategic. I don't want to take anything that comes in the door just because it reduces cost. I'm hoping the community feels that you want us to use our time as wisely as possible. So we use that capacity to create really efficient, low-cost financing for projects that are important to us as a region, not just the project that came in the door yesterday. So I'd love to do probably a little bit less retail and a little bit more job creation. Not to say that certain sorts of retail projects that are unique in your communities wouldn't be valuable to you, so maybe we should do that. But by and large, I'd love for us to be thinking larger about attracting investment to the community, not just financing projects because they've come through the door and asked. Lastly is business investment is our 3rd business line, and this would be an area that's brand new for us. And we say investment supporting key industries, and what do we mean by that? Right now, today, we don't invest in anything. We help finance projects, but it's somebody else's money. So a company comes to us, says, could you do X? We issue the bonds. My team knows how to issue the debt. We work with investment bankers. They're sold in New York, let's say. Bond buyers buy them. We're basically a third party. We're helping it happen, but that's all we do. What I'd like is to be working on projects in your community, 2 or 3 or 4 areas of concentration where we actually can make investment in the community. And I think if we're smart about, and it's a financial set of smarts, we can do that, and I'd like to attract private investment into a portfolio of projects because they like Cleveland. It's a low-cost Renaissance city. It's got a great workforce. We're very focused about training that workforce. We're very focused around our assets. And I would say those assets probably are in logistics, perhaps some of which around maritime, probably I would say quite a lot over the next 20 or 30 years. We would say around aerospace and some technologies that support aerospace, and we'd start around our Cleveland-Hopkins International Airport and NASA and the unique assets there that are around that facility. I would say this is a community we just announced a great big expansion of air service into Hopkins, but it's not a kind of an area around Hopkins that is a burgeoning economic district, really. Very exciting, vital cities, you'll see all sorts of activity happening around the airport, and here I don't think we do. I think we could do better. And we have NASA right next to Hopkins that wants to expand and become very involved and integral in the next generation spacecraft mission, which should yield Cleveland and Ohio great riches in aerospace development. But we have to be very, very, very partner-like with NASA and very visionary about how we do that. So I would say the key areas are logistics, advanced manufacturing around the port. I would say focus around the airport and certain technologies, and then I would also focus on healthcare around University Circle and the related areas. So that's my summary of where we've been and what we're thinking about for the future. And thank you for listening, and I'd love to answer your questions.